What's going on, Felters? We are live. Broncos country, let's ride. It's time to break down the Broncos 2024 season, and let's talk about what we think they should do to improve their roster after a playoff berth in Bo Nix's rookie season. I am your host, Colin Tong. Joining me, huge Rockets fan, Reagan Losher.
Yo, what's up, Broncos fan? Let's ride. What a year for you fellas out there. I mean, Bo Nix, everybody was saying, could this guy be the next Drew Brees? I mean, that's still to be determined, but hey, he definitely showed like he's legit. You hit on that pick, and it seems like you can make a case, and I'm sure you guys would say he's the best rookie quarterback in that draft class.
You could argue it if you're a Broncos fan, but everyone else is going to tell you you're wrong. It was Jaden Daniels, but I would
hear it. I would hear it.
I could argue he's number 2 for sure.
Because ultimately, Jaden Daniels don't have to see Patrick Mahomes twice a year.
Yes, but Jaden Daniels was the rookie of the year, and I think won rookie of the week like 12 times, something like that.
I mean, I think that's I'm pretty sure it's a fan vote. The Pepsi rookie of the week is a fan vote. So Broncos fans, get better at voting.
Yeah, come on, dude. We need more Twitter fingers out of you. But let's get into their 2024 season here. Reagan, what grade would you give the Denver Broncos?
I'd give them an A+, honestly.
A+?
Yes, dude. I don't think this season could have gone any better than it did. You didn't have a lot of cap space. You didn't have a lot of draft capital. You take Bo Nix. Everybody's like, is Sean Payton worth it? We gave up all this capital. We have all this dead money from Russell Wilson. You draft Bo Nix. He leads your team in a tough AFC to a first-round playoff game. Not only that, in the playoff game against Buffalo, like you're a missed field goal away from being tied at halftime in Buffalo against the team that's been a perennial playoff team. So, the defense was playing out of their mind all season. Bo Nix with, really no run game at all, continued to win games. They continued to figure out ways. I mean, and that defense had, Pat Surtain, Depoy, Zach Allen, I believe, was second team All-Pro. And who else? They had one other. Nick Benito as well.
13 and a half sacks. That was third in the league. And this team led the league in sacks as a team. So very impressive.
3 All-Pros on that defense. And I mean, offensively, like I said, they didn't even have a run game. It was really Bo Nix going to Cortland Sutton. And then, we saw a bunch of different young wide receivers step up. Really impressed with Marvin Mims, especially down the stretch. I mean, he was on fire. He caught fire. I mean, All-Pro Marvin Mims. I mean, not as a receiver, but as a returner as his rookie year. But ultimately, if you look at this team on paper, you could argue they had one of the worst rosters on paper coming into the year. I know I was super down on them. I thought, this is a team that could be picking number 1 next year. So they completely proved me wrong. So I have to give them an A+ because I didn't think there was a world where they could even make the playoffs. And you can compare them to other teams, in that situation, like Washington. But Washington had the money to go out in free agency. Washington had the draft capital to go out and get some pieces around Jaden Daniels. I mean, the Broncos didn't have much draft capital. They didn't have much cap space, and they were still able to put together a roster. And I would argue the AFC is way more loaded than the NFC right now. So I think it's a lot easier to get into the playoffs in the NFC versus the AFC. We saw a lot of good teams not even make the playoffs. So I'm just super impressed. But what did you give them?
I gave him an A-. And it's similar situation like with the Chargers, where it's like, you didn't win a playoff game, but based off of everything you had going against you, just to make the playoffs was a huge success. I mean, Bo Nix, the 6th quarterback taken. How often does the 6th quarterback taken in a draft light the world on fire like he did?
Was he 6?
Yeah, because you had obviously the top 3, Caleb, Jaden, May. You had Penix. You had
McCarthy, yeah.
McCarthy.
Yeah, he was 6.
Then you had Bo Nix.
Yeah, it's crazy to think he was 6. It's just like,
right?
He was 6. It's just crazy because, you're completely right. But it's just,
when does that ever happen? That he went first 12. Of all, a 6th quarterback taken in a draft is even good, at all.
Yeah,
that's very rare. The fact that he was this good as a rookie, throwing for 3,700 yards with, not a premier wide receiver core. Cortland Sutton's a good player. You mentioned Troy Franklin didn't really do a ton as a rookie, but your boy Marvin Mims, he made some big plays for him. Bo had 29 passing touchdowns, 12 picks. Also, I think people slept on his ability as a runner. I didn't think he was going to be that dynamic with his legs, 430 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground. And he picked up a ton of third downs with his legs, which is huge for this offense. I mean, you can't be more happy with what you got from Bo Nix. And he was a very popular pick in mock drafts at 12. That he just fit the Sean Payton molds. And when it happened, everyone's like, oh, that's a reach. That's a reach. Bo Nix should be a round 2 or 3 guy. No, he should have got picked higher, honestly, after seeing what he did as a rookie.
Right now, I think it's clear he's, top 2 rookie out of all the quarterbacks. I don't think anyone's going to argue that he's not. I don't mean maybe. No, I don't think you can make a case for Caleb or Drake May even. Like, I think right now he's firmly at that 2. And, you could argue he's better than Jaden, but I don't think many people will have it. But yeah, he's firmly a top 2 quarterback out of the 6 rookies.
Yeah. Now that doesn't mean he'll end up being the second best, but based off what we just saw, he had the second best rookie season as the 6th quarterback taken in a loaded draft. Very impressive. Got to tip the cap to Sean Payton, giving the boot to Russell Wilson and eating all of that dead cap, just knowing that this is not my guy anymore and just moving on. And $89 million in dead cap, the most in the NFL. I believe that's the most in NFL history. So
yeah,
to make the playoffs with that much money that you're not allocating towards your roster is nuts.
Well, that's why I gave him an A+, dude. Because like you just said, all that dead cap and they still made the playoffs.
I know, it's crazy. It's just like hard. I gave it A- and I was like really tussling with it because it didn't feel right.
Hater.
They didn't win a playoff game though. You know what I mean? It's like,
but it was house money, bro. Like it's house.
I know
money
it was
ultimately.
house money. It's tough, man. It's tough,
and it's based off of expectations. Money. Like you could argue they had the worst roster on paper,
but they still did win. I think 8 games last year. Like Sean Payton's a great coach.
Yeah,
I thought
but
they're going to be a competitive team. That defense still had a lot of dudes. They had the 7th total defense, the 3rd scoring defense this year.
Yeah, the defense had a lot of dudes, but I don't know if you would consider Zach Allen or Nick Bonito a dude that would be like a second-team All-Pro coming into it. Like, obviously, we knew Pat Surtain was elite. I mean, I didn't know Depoy elite, but I knew he was up there. But, like, coming into the year, I don't think you would have said Bonito or Zach Allen would be All-Pro level players.
Yeah, I mean, and they weren't, like, legit offensively. They were 10th in scoring, but 19th total. But, they have a good offensive line. Sean Payton made sure that was the first thing he did when he took the job. They brought over Mike McGlinchey. Quinn Muirner's at their guard is a beast.
All
I think he's
absolute
beast. You have Garrett Bowles at left tackle, another beast. So a great offensive line in front of a young quarterback. Oh, look what happens, man. A rookie quarterback can be successful. It's like, build up that fucking offensive line. Every other team that needs a quarterback, talking about my Giants. But, I mean, you got to tip the cap. Hell of a season. I gave him an A-. Maybe I'm being a little too harsh on not winning the playoff game because they did run into Buffalo in Buffalo, which they didn't lose all year in Buffalo. So it is tough to kind of bash them for that. But ultimately, I think an A- is a pretty safe grade for them.
Yeah. I mean, you're just a hater, but it's cool.
It still is nuts.
What are you, one of those stickler professors? There's always room for improvement.
Dude, I gave it A-. It's not bad.
You're telling Broncos
it's really
fans,
good.
There's always room for improvements.
If they were picking like 8th in the draft last year or 4th in the draft last year, like, they were a solid team last year. It's not like
they were a solid team last year when they, I don't know. I feel like they had, I don't know. It's just, it ultimately comes down to expectations, and I just didn't have them going far. I don't think many people did.
Well, Reagan, they're starting to clear some money off their books. They got $35 million in cap space to play with this offseason, and they're not losing much. Javonte Williams, the free agent, I don't think he'll be back. DJ Jones, Cody Barton, like no monster big names from that team. None of their all-pros are leaving, right? So they got some cap space to improve this roster. Curious what you think they should do. I think adding weapons for Bo Nix has to be a priority here.
Yeah, I think the biggest priority is running back, but you won't get that in free agency. I mean, unless you want to go Aaron Jones, but I'd rather go and draft a running back in this stack class.
I agree. What's interesting? Sean Payton said, I think it was at the Senior Bowl or something. He said he wants to go with a committee approach, and that's what they did this year. They did have a committee approach. It's like some games, Audric Estime started to bust off some decent-sized runs, and it's like, oh, here comes Estime, he's going to take over the role. But then like the next week, it was a McLaughlin week. And then Javonte Williams got going a little bit. And like none of them were elite by any stretch of the means, but they'd have pretty strong games in terms of like yards per carry. And they'd gash defenses a little bit, but it was a committee attack. But I think a bell cow back would be very beneficial. And like Sean Payton had Alvin Kamara. So I think it's
But he never even used
him
as a bell cow back necessarily. Like Mark Ingram was there.
Yeah,
most
he had
of the
Ingram
time
as well.
So I could see Aaron Jones coming in, maybe pairing him with Estime because Aaron Jones is obviously a very good receiver. I could see them going that route, like, hey, we can compete now. Aaron Jones just wants to go to a team that's, potentially a playoff team. So I could see that happening. And then them going with a 2-back approach with Jones and Estime, or I could see them drafting, an Alvin Kamara-esque type back. Like I think if they are going to draft someone, they're going to draft the running back with the wide receiver skill set. I don't know, ultimately if Jaleel McLaughlin is in the cards long term. I mean, he did have some juice. We saw that. So maybe they're fine with McLaughlin and Estime, but I would think they're going to bring in someone else. I'm not even going to suggest Amari and Hampton because I feel like if I do, people are going to be like, nope, Javonte left such a bad taste in their mouth from North Carolina, which is not fair to him. But I feel like a lot of Broncos fans are like, nah, we're good. We don't want Hampton in the second round. But I could see them targeting a guy on day 2 for sure. I don't think, where you are right now in the draft. I believe they're 20 in the draft.
Yes,
I mean, if Genty is to fall, you have to consider it. But outside of that, I don't think they go running back in round 1.
Yeah, I don't think they go RB in round 1 either. I also don't think Genty will be there at 20. But I think something that Sean Payton mentions that he needs in his offense is what he likes to call the Joker, kind of like that Taysom Hill role. Think about it, right? In New Orleans, like I'm not saying he has to throw the ball like Taysom Hill, like a hybrid quarterback, but kind of that H-back type of role. He says he wants that, and that's why a lot of mock drafts have him going with a tight end at number 20. Colston Loveland's a very popular pick. Tyler Warren will not be on the board at that point, but Adam Troutman was your lead guy. I don't think you're hesitant to draft over him, right? So I think tight end could be a position that they address in round 1, if not round 2. I agree with you. I think a running back on day 2 makes a lot of sense, and I think that's where we're going to see a lot of these guys go. Daniel Jeremiah's last mock draft that he just released has 3 running backs in round 1, including Amari Hampton and Travion Henderson. I don't think that happened. I mean, I think it's a decent idea because that's fair. Like in the 20s, like for based off of like how good these players are as prospects on the board when you cut out positional value, right? I think that's kind of where a lot of these guys are ranked as prospects. But the teams know there's so many good ones where they're not going to take one, take one on day 2. I think that's where we're going to see the run on them.
I would say there's a better chance we see 4 quarterbacks in the first round this year than we do 3 running backs. Because that
is not true. That is
no,
not
because I think
who's the 4th quarterback?
That's the thing.
Will Howard?
I don't even know who it would be. It just ultimately comes down to how desperate teams are right now for quarterbacks and how very few there are. Versus in the running back market, there's so many, and there's a lot of teams that have filled their running back needs where they can wait till day 2. So I think ultimately, I find it hard to believe that a team would use that pick where there's going to be a lot of quarterback needy teams that are willing to trade up a few spots who have those early second round picks to potentially get the 3rd year or the 5th year option on a quarterback. Where in the running back, I don't know, the 5th year option is not that. I mean, I guess it's very important, but I don't know. I just don't think I still think even with Saquon getting that contract, it's still not going to fully sink in with a lot of teams of how valuable the running backs are.
Yes. And in terms of the defense, like DJ Jones was their nose guard. Denver likes to run.
Oh, also Jalen Milroe was my 4th quarterback.
Oh, really? You think Milroe's the 4th guy?
Yeah.
I don't know. Will Howard's getting a little bit of love here, so I don't know. Milroe's he had so many just really bad games.
So raw.
I mean,
he's so raw.
Yeah. I mean, we have a lot of time to talk about the draft. They're not going quarterback here for Denver, but DJ Jones was his nose tackle. They like to run a 3-4. I could see them trying to add some more guys in that interior. A guy that kind of sticks out to me is Milton Williams from Philadelphia after that Super Bowl that he just had. I know he's climbing a lot of free agency boards for a lot of teams, and he might get some good money. Yeah, I think adding to that defensive line after you led the league in sacks, clearly that was a recipe that worked very well for you in terms of that defense being a top 10 unit. So I would like to see some more juice added on the interior of that defensive line.
Yeah, and I think, you could add to the secondary as well. Like, obviously you have Surtain, but it never hurts to try to go out there. Like, I wouldn't hate pairing him up with like a DJ Reed, get
Yeah, they
another
were the
lockdown corner.
19th ranked pass defense, Reagan, third ranked rush defense. So they definitely can add to that back end of the defense, because if you have a Pat Surtain that's just erasing this side of the field, you add a DJ Reed, dude. Like it's gonna be tough to score in this Denver team. Even more so, they were the third best scoring defense this year.
Yeah, and I would think, I'm trying to think if there's any I don't even know if they need to go. I don't know. The wide receiver position is tough because I like Sutton a lot. I like Mims a lot. I do like the idea of Troy Franklin. I feel like they probably should try to get another guy in there. I would lean towards.
Who?
I don't think you need to pay a name. Like, there's also some of the younger guys. Like, I wouldn't hate them taking a stab at it. Like, I'm not going to say Hollywood because I think they don't need a Hollywood type with the stretching, but I wouldn't hate an Elijah Moore, like a younger guy that, still you can get on the cheap. Like, yeah, I wouldn't mind Elijah Moore going there, honestly. Maybe I'm a little more bullish on him. I know I've brought him up for a couple teams, but, he showed enough to me and the way it is, I don't think he's going to demand a lot of money where Denver can bring another guy in there, in hopes of developing him more so. And he's at least showing flashes with, the Jets and Cleveland that it would be worth it.
I think it's a solid fit too, because Sutton's your go-to guy on the outside. So you kind of do want to get some more help in terms of working over the middle of the field, right? And that is the tight end position, which I think they'll draft. And that is more of a guy that plays on the slot. Looking at the free agent wide receivers, none of them really stand out to me as a great fit here for Denver. Like, I think Chris Godwin would be a really good fit. I just don't see him leaving Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I feel like that might be what they're missing, is just a dominant player in the slot.
Yeah, I think that would certainly help Bo Nix, but
go trade for Devontae Adams.
I mean, Devontae Adams. I don't know. I don't know if I see Devontae Adams in Denver, but yeah, who knows? Sean Payton's a salesman, so maybe you can convince him to come over to Denver. All right, let's get Drock in here.
Boo! Yeah, Drock's in here. I don't know what kind of energy that was, but we're bringing it in.
I like it.
Drock's question of the night for the Broncos: was drafting Bo Nix at number 12 overall a desperate move, or did the Broncos actually find their long-term answer at quarterback?
It was both. I mean, it was a desperate move, but ultimately they did find their long-term answer at quarterback. Sean Payton got Drew Brees 2.0, or, something like that. I mean, I think they couldn't have asked for more in year one than they got. I mean, he led them to the playoffs. He put up big numbers. He improved as the season progressed, not only as a passer, but as a runner. And I mean, ultimately, he made Denver an attractive destination, I think, for free agents to come in this offseason to continue to build. I would say they're not in their window yet of Super Bowl, but, next year I would like to see them win a playoff game. And then after that, it's like, all right, like this team could seriously compete. And then maybe they're getting some big name guys coming in where it's like, hey, now we're in our Super Bowl window. Now we're going to compete to win the division. Similar to what I said with the Chargers, I would like to see this team trying to compete for the division next year, not just getting a wild card in the AFC. I would like to see them go out and win the AFC West. So my prediction is either the Chargers or the Broncos will win that division next year. I would love to see, the Kings of Kansas City fall.
No, you're crazy for that. But yeah, I agree with you. They were desperate for a quarterback. They weren't going to roll into the season with Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham quarterback room. They took the sixth guy off the board at the quarterback position, the top 12 picks, and everyone's like, oh, we saw that one coming. Like, let's see what happens here with Bo Nix. But yeah, sometimes it works out, and you got to tip the cap to Sean Payton and his ability to develop young quarterbacks. I mean, Bo Nix with 31 total touchdowns, 12 picks as a rookie. Yeah, great offensive line in front of him. Not a premier back. Cortland Sutton's your number one, is solid, not great. Yeah, they found their guy. And yeah, I think Bo Nix is the prime example of why quarterbacks should stay in college for their 4 years. Now,
too, yeah.
Bo Nix, I think, got a fifth year from COVID, but he stepped in right away and he was a leader. He had so many games under his belt that there wasn't this big learning curve once he got to the league, and he was ready to go right away, which is why maybe picking him at 12 wasn't that big of a reach, because he was so experienced and ready to go and lead your team.
Yeah, and that's really what excites me for next year, is the fact that, he did all this without even a legit run game. If they can figure out how to run the ball, I mean, not only will that open up things running the ball, but for the play action, I mean, that could really open up some things for him in that type of his game. So I'm really excited, and maybe some options, because we saw, how good he is with the legs. So maybe you add in some read options next year, some triple options, some different stuff to really open up that playbook. So I really do hope they can figure out the running back position next year, because I think it'll really unlock what he can do.
Absolutely. Broncos fans, what do you guys think they should do this offseason? Drop a comment down below, even if you're not a Broncos fan. We love some friendly banter. Let's go back and forth a little bit. Let's figure out what the Denver Broncos can do to win a playoff game next year.
Yeah, I'm curious what they want to do in the draft, too. I mean, it's always interesting when you get towards those 15 to 25 range, or 15 on, because it's look, these teams are in the playoffs last year. Obviously, they're there. There's a couple different holes we need to fill. Who knows who will be there? So they probably have a lot of different guys on their boards that they're hoping fall, or maybe they're let's reach on them. So I'm just curious where they're at with that. But drop a like, fellas.